what are the effects of Christianophobia from, you can choose from individual to societal level. You've already kind of gone around it, but very briefly, if each of you from whatever domain or field that you want to speak from, what would be the consequence, what would be the effects if we do conform, if we do compromise?
I'll start. I think, okay, from a theological perspective, just simply this. Anyone, everything of people, to compromise your true Christian value, I think in a way, it's especially to an individual. It's just simply, just like Iben said, it simply reflects your true spiritual condition of how you are and how your spirit is. And I will say, when you look at people who, who may look small and frail, but yet have very strong faith. So the outside appearance does not really matter. It is what really is inside, what drives a person. And so even the whole thing of the motive of why a person will do. I mean, for me, why am I a professor? My spirituality determines that, because I see my role as not just me as an educator, but as a mentor to the next generation. I see that my job as a ministry. Why? Because that's my spiritual condition. And so to actually compromise, again, it's just a reflection of what the person's spiritual condition. And I think also it's a thing of going to the thing at the beginning of light versus darkness. It's simply that society right now is in darkness. And whether or not they realize it, they need the light. And in society needs people who are willing to show the light. And so even going into just mere Christian life, of if Christians simply obeyed and live according to what the word says, it basically gives the alternative in society, because the full expression of sinful expression, society, and everything else, it creates moral values that are very much that are not very pragmatic. Christian values, when God gave us His moral law, He gave it also with the mind of building a well-functioning society, from individual relationships to parenting and families and all that. So it becomes a well-functioning society. What we have is just dysfunctionality and moral values that simply are not very pragmatic. So basically, Christians need to show the light, to show the alternative in society. But of course, that alternative has to be something that first of all, that's evident. In other words, we do need to live it out, so people need to see it. Not just mere hear about it, but to see it and to see the true result of what it really means to live in that light.
I love that we are represented between the three of you. Your overlapping fields are academia, church, and media. I wanted to hear from Dr. Yancey on what the consequences would be if we conform, if we compromise within our scholarship, within education.
Sure. One thing I would recommend, if you get a chance, is to read the book, The Benedict Option, because it talks about building a Christian community. If we don't do that, if we don't build a Christian community, then the Christian voice can be lost, because Christianophobic elements want to drive Christians out of the public square. And they enunciate this when you interview them. Whenever you have them write down what they want. They want to drive Christians out of the public square. And one of the dangers of that, beyond some of the values that will be lost, there's been some really good arguments on how even secular societies have been borrowing Christian values for some time now, even though they've become more secular. And long term, this won't last. One of the reasons why is, if you look at our society, we have a society today that is not only post-Christian, but has become so individualistic that people are disconnected. People are connected through, on the internet and through video games, and there's a lot of talk about how you look at, there's some research showing that people are not only marrying at lower levels, but even that their relationships with other people, their friendships, are at lower levels. I think I read research where something like in the United States, 30% of people did not have a friend, or 30%, something like that. It was an incredibly high percentage. As a Christian community, we can be a presence for so many people who are living in anomie today, who are living in this sort of, they don't have connection to anyone, no real connections, no real touch, no real feel for others. We can be a powerful witness in that way for people who need us to be, who say your value is not, that you got a dozen likes on Facebook. Your value is that you're a child of God and God made you. Your value is not your assertion about your sexuality or your gender or even your race, as important those things may be. Your value comes from God, who still loves you, despite all the mistakes that we make. And that's where our true values are. If we disappear, that voice is gone. And I think so many people need that voice. I think that it's a long-term game. I don't think I'm going to live long enough to see the revitalization of Christianity here in the United States. I'm hoping that my children or grandchildren will. But it's a game that we can win if we retain our voice, and that's why we have to build our community. And yeah, part of it is putting the mark in the sand. Here's where we're going to stand. We're not going to move. Part of it is also being a loving community where we're supporting one another, where we're reaching out to the marginalized, where we're exhibiting, God's love, where we're exhibiting, God's priorities. I think that will long-term have a big impact and lead to a revitalization of Christianity that is more meaningful than what we've had in the past. But it's going to be a long-term, it's going to be a lot of hard work, and we're going to have to really incorporate those Christian values. So that's where why I say it's so important to work towards maintaining our Christian voice, our Christian impact in our society.
Well, I'm so glad that we're recording this, because I could just imagine taking little sections of each of you speaking and having it be so encouraging to those who are feeling isolated or marginalized, or just set aside and silenced and excluded in so many different fields. I love that it's long-term. We were studying Hebrews in my Bible study, and Hebrews 11 in particular, and what you said, Dr. Yancey, about, you may not be able to see or receive this promise, right? There's a section here in verse 13. All these people, speaking about the ancients, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. That's something that we need to keep in mind. It gives me so much hope to know that we have templates, we have models of the faith, the hall of faith, and that as Christians today, we have a role in this. That though we may not see it, though may not we receive it, we can see it, we can envision it, and as Christians have a part in that.